Here is the problem with most coaching and therapeutic relationships. Your client comes in with a goal: lose 10 pounds, stop procrastinating, fix their relationship, and you help them work towards that goal. That's your job, right? But here's the truth most practitioners miss: their manager parts are the ones setting the goals, and your manager parts are the ones helping them achieve that. So, what healing looks like is often two protector parts, yours and theirs, trying to control the system. And here's the kicker: these manager parts are the ones that get people in the door. They're the parts that make people say, I need help. But when we as coaches over identify with those same manager parts, we reinforce the very belief the client came in with. There's something wrong with me that needs to be fixed. And that, my friend, is the trap. And if that hit a nerve, I get it. You're not doing it wrong. You're not a bad coach. You're not a misguided practitioner. You're likely just doing what most of us were taught: help people reach their goals, solve the problem they came in with, use the tools, follow the method, be of service. And that can create movement. But here's the truth I've learned through years of doing this work: true, deep, sustainable, long-term transformation needs something more than a mindset and habit shift. It needs more than just tools. You need self energy, that calm, clear, compassionate presence that can sit with a client system without needing to change it right away. Because when we coach from our manager parts, even with the best intentions, we end up reinforcing urgency, pressure, and performance. So this video is an invitation to do it differently. I am Andrea Tessier, Master Life Coach, IFS practitioner, and someone who works with coaches, space holders, and conscious leaders who are ready to bring more presence and less pressure to their session to truly be of sustainable service for the long term. So let's talk about coach parts and what self-led coaching really looks like, and the subtle ways our own parts can hijack even the most loving container. Specifically today, we're talking about what happens when coaching is manager to manager, the most common coaching parts that can sneak into your sessions, what self-led coaching actually looks like in practice, and how to return to self, even when your parts get activated mid-session. Because transformation doesn't come from control, it comes from curiosity, and it starts with you. So let's talk about the real reason so many coaching sessions feel like they hit the ceiling. And it's not because you're not skilled or your client isn't ready or your client isn't coachable. It's because you have coach parts and they show up more than you think. Every coach has them. I do too. I am not immune to this. They are not bad, but they are protective. And when we don't know they're there, they can end up running the session. One of the most common is the people pleaser, the part that wants to be liked, wants to be the safe space, wants to make sure the client feels good at all costs. So what ends up happening is you hold back. You don't reflect the pattern to your client. You avoid going to the edge. Maybe the client shares something you know is worth exploring, but instead you say, yeah, okay, that makes sense, and move on. That's not softness, it's fear, and it can rob the session of the depth. Another part is the fixer. This is the coach part with the agenda. It wants the client to stop binging, stop procrastinating, stop dating that unavailable person. So it jumps in with strategies, with plans, with suggestions, tracking habits, because it really, 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 really wants to help. But here's the thing: when we coach from this part, we end up siding with the client's manager parts against the will of their firefighters, right? The binge eater, firefighter. The client might already feel shame about it. And so when we try to solve it too quickly, we reinforce the shame without ever meeting the part that was trying to help them survive in the first place. Another sneaky one, the frustrated part. This part gets irritated when the client doesn't make progress. It thinks, why are we still talking about this? Why haven't they done what they said they would do? This client isn't coachable. Do I need to end this container? It might sound like you trying to lovingly push them forward, but underneath, it's your own part feeling like you're failing if they don't change. You might not say it out loud, but the energy is there. The pressure, the urgency, the subtle disappointment. Then there's the permeable one. This is the coach who wants to be more like a friend, the one who says yes to extended time, late night texts because they don't want to feel rigid or transactional. This part fears being too much or not enough at the same time. And so it can overgive, overfunction, eventually burns out. And the client, they get more access, but not necessarily the transformation they came to. Let's face it, people don't come to coaching because they need another friend. Now, let's talk about the pusher part. This part thinks it knows what's best. Maybe the client is in a long distance relationship and the pusher has already decided that's never going to work. So it subtly leads the conversation towards ending it without ever naming the part of the coach who's holding that belief. It feels like intuition, but often it's actually just preference dressed up in guidance. And then the tender one, the comparer. This part gets activated when your client is more successful than you in some area. Maybe they had a $50,000 launch and you're still figuring out your next offer. Suddenly, this quiet voice and says, who am I to help them? You collapse a little, you over explain, you disconnect, you get stuck. Not because you don't care or because you are not skilled, but because you're trying to protect your own sense of value. The wanderer is another one that shows up when we are afraid to take the lead. This part lets the session drift. It follows the client in circles without ever anchoring the energy. It fears being too controlling, so it gives up structure altogether, leaving the client more scattered than when they arrived. And finally, one of my favorites, the overanalyzer. This part lives in the head. It's smart, it's insightful, it's articulate, and terrified of emotion. So it breaks everything down. It makes meaning. It connects the dots, but it avoids the felt experience. The client might tear up, and instead of staying with the emotion with tenderness, this part says, oh, it's interesting how that connects to your attachment style. Not because it doesn't care, but it's trying to keep itself safe. So if you're noticing some of these parts in yourself, good. It's not a problem. This is the work. Being a self-led coach doesn't mean your parts never show up. It means you notice when they do. You pause, you breathe, and you come back to your center. You might even name it. There is a part of me here that feels really protective right now. Can I take a small moment to check in with it before we keep going? That's leadership. That's modeling self-leadership. That is healing in action. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about being aware enough not to blend. Because the most powerful coaching you can offer doesn't come from your tools. It comes from your present. When you are in self, your client system feels it and something begins to settle. And that's the kind of space where real transformation happens. Not because you had the answer, but because you made room for them to find it. That's what we're here for. Okay, so let's talk about why most clients come to your coaching anyway. Most clients come into coaching from a manager part, a part of them that wants change in some aspect of their life, to stop procrastinating, to lose the weight, to communicate better, to quit drinking, to fix their relationship or attachment style. The manager is motivated, it is clear and in control. And as coaches, we can meet that energy with our own manager part, the part of us that wants to help them reach that goal. So the session becomes a conversation between two protector parts: the client's manager part that says, make me better, and the coach's manager parts that says, no problem. I've got the tools. I know how to do that. And on the surface, this might seem like progress. But here's what's actually happening underneath. When we're coaching from manager to manager, this can create more polarization inside the system of our client. The part that helps them binge or avoid or lash out or freeze, what IFS calls firefighters, those parts aren't being met. They're actually being ignored, or worse, judged. And so the coach can unintentionally side with the manager, reinforcing the belief that part of you is a problem and it needs to go. And so when the firefighter feels rejected or threatened, it doesn't surrender. It does the opposite, fights back. Our parts are always fighting back from being dismissed. So it flares up because it's trying to protect something deeper, an exile inside the system. The one who carries the shame or the grief or the fear of not being lovable or not being safe. The exile gets missed completely. So what happens? The client makes some progress for a while. They implement the tools, they show up, the manager is proud. But the firefighter is watching, still guarding the exile, still waiting for the system to actually feel safe. And eventually, it pushes back. The binge returns, the client goes quiet, they ghost the process, they lash out, and the manager feels betrayed. Why can't I just do it? What's wrong with me? And the coach might start to feel frustrated too, wondering, like, why aren't they changing? But what's really happening is that the system is trying to protect itself. The firefighter steps in to balance out the manager's strong agenda because the pain it's guarding hasn't been acknowledged. So the client spins, it moves forward, it slips back, it gains insight, but no integration. This isn't about self-sabotage because the session was built on control, not connection. And this is why coaching that stays manager to manager can look productive, but feels hollow. It keeps the system hustling instead of healing. So real transformation doesn't happen through managing the parts. It happens when we meet them. And for that, we need to be coaching from self-energy, not from urgency, not from fear, not from hidden agendas. Because when we coach from self, our client system can exhale. And the hard truth, most coaching, honestly, most therapy is built on this dynamic. It's all about helping the client meet the conditions of the ego. Be more productive, be more confident, be more attractive, be more healed. And again, these desires are not bad. They're beautiful. These manager parts are trying to help the client survive in a world that rewards performance over presence. It's trying to hold them to their highest vision. But when we coach from this place, we're often helping the client build a shinier cage instead of setting them free. So I want to be clear here. You can absolutely still help your client reach their goals. You can help them stop the pattern, change the habit, feel better in their love life. But there is a better way to get there. One that doesn't create backlash, inner war, or burnout. One that doesn't bypass the parts that need the care the most. one that brings the system into wholeness, not just compliance. Oh, self-led coaching. So what does that look like? It doesn't mean that we are partless. It doesn't mean we are perfectly regulated or never triggered. Heck no. It means you are aware of your own system and you are leading the session from your self energy rather than your strategies. In a self-led session, the goal is not to control the client's progress. It's to create enough spaciousness, curiosity, and compassion that their system can begin to soften. So you're not trying to fix the procrastination. You're asking, can we get to know the part of you that's avoiding this? You're not trying to stop the binge. You're wondering, what's this part protecting you from? You're not trying to make them speak up more in their relationship. You're asking, what's the fear underneath saying what you need? Not performance-based questions, real relational invitations. Maybe a part of you is feeling judgmental or urgent or annoyed. In a self-led moment, you don't push that part away. You might quietly notice it, name it, make room for it so it doesn't have to take over. You can come back to the part after the session to give it the attention it needs, or you might even say, there is a part of me right now that really wants to jump in and fix this, but I'm going to pause, take a deep breath and check in, and then we'll continue. This actually creates so much more safety and trust because we're not controlling the session, but we're completely present, modeling what it looks like to be self-led in real time. The magic, when you're in self, the client system starts to trust you. Not just you, the person, the space you hold, the energy you carry, the steadiness you offer. And that's when protectors soften. That's when firefighters step aside and exiles begin to emerge. Not because you forced anything, but because you made it safe enough to feel. So the beauty, when you coach from self, when you hold space for the whole system, not just the part that wants to change, but the ones that are afraid of it too, something profound begins to happen. The protective parts relax. Procrastination loses its urgency. Binge impulses don't feel so overwhelming. The reactive part that yells, it starts to soften because it knows it's no longer alone. The parts feel heard, respected, and met with compassion. They no longer have to protect in such extreme ways. And that is when the original goal, the reason your client came to you, starts to shift. Not because you forced it or placated it with tools, not because you outperformed the problem, but because the system no longer needs that pattern to survive. And this is what sustainable change looks like. This is what long-term transformation feels like. This is what coaching from self creates. Okay, so know this. It doesn't mean your parts never show up. It means that you know when they do, you lead from awareness, not reactivity. In a self-led session, you're not trying to fix the behavior. You're helping your client build a relationship with the part behind it. So instead of asking, how can we stop you from procrastinating? You might say, what's this part of you afraid would happen if you took action? Instead of, let's fix your communication skills, you could ask, who inside of you is being triggered when you feel unheard? And instead of offering another tool to override the pattern, you might bring compassionate curiosity to what is driving it. These are real moments of self to part connection. And they sound like, would it be okay if we got curious about the part of you that's trying so hard to solve this? What's the fear underneath this urgency to change? Or even, I'm noticing a part of me right now that feels concerned. I'm going to take a breath and check in with it before we continue. Right there. modeling self energy. And that's coaching in a way that brings both of you into present. Because if we are not aware of our own parts, they will lead the session. Are you secretly hoping your client breaks up with their partner? Are you getting frustrated they're still looping in the same story? Are you wanting them to just do the work already? Those are coach parts, and they need your attention, not your shame. So we're not here to transcend the parts. We're here to be aware of them. So you can name them, pause with them, and return to self. Because when you are in self energy, your client doesn't just feel safer, they feel seen. And that's where the shift happens. Okay. So if this resonated, if a part of you is breathing easier or maybe feeling seen, I invite you to stay connected. Please like this video if it helped you reframe your work. Drop a comment to share which coach part shows up for you. And subscribe for more IFS insights and self-led coaching tools every single week. And before you go, I need to say thank you. Thank you for the work you do, for the way you hold space, for showing up again and again with so much heart. This work isn't easy, but it's sacred, and we don't have to do it alone.